Marcus and Diane Williams drove their 10-year-old Toyota to Elite Motors on a bright Saturday morning. The sun shone on the glass building where fancy cars sparkled inside. After saving money for 20 years, they wanted to buy a nice car for their son James. It was going to be a surprise for his 35th birthday next week. "Are you sure about this?" Diane asked as they parked between a shiny BMW and a new Mercedes. "This place looks very expensive." Marcus squeezed her hand. "James deserves it. He's worked so hard since college. And we've saved enough." What Marcus and Diane didn't know was that their son had become very rich. James started a small tech company 5 years ago. Last month, he sold it for billions of dollars. But James never told his parents about his wealth. He lived in a normal house and drove a regular car when he visited them. He didn't want his money to change their relationship. Marcus held the door open for Diane as they entered Elite Motors. Cool air hit their faces as they stepped into the huge showroom. Cars of all colors sat on the shiny floor under bright lights. Some cost more than their house. "Wow," Diane whispered. She fixed her simple blue blouse and wished she had dressed up more. Marcus wore clean jeans and his best polo shirt. He had polished his old shoes that morning. They looked okay, but not as nice as the shoes the salesman wore. 3 salesmen stood near the front desk. They wore perfect suits and expensive watches. They looked at Marcus and Diane, but didn't move to help them. One man whispered something, and the others laughed. "Let's look around," Marcus said, trying to sound confident. "Someone will help us soon." They walked slowly past the cars. A red sports car, a big black SUV, a silver sedan with leather seats. Each one had a price tag that made Diane's eyes widen. But they had saved $90,000 for this gift. They could afford something nice. 15 minutes passed. No one came to help them. People in fancy clothes entered after them and got help right away. Marcus felt his face getting hot. He knew why they were being ignored. "I'm going to talk to them," Marcus said. Diane nodded. She had seen this before. As a black couple, they often got treated differently in expensive stores. But they had money to spend just like anyone else. Marcus walked up to the 3 salesmen. The tallest one had a name tag that said Richard. He had slick hair and a fake smile. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely. "My wife and I would like to see some of your cars." Richard looked at Marcus's clothes. Then he looked at Diane waiting by a car. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "These cars start at $80,000, Richard said slowly, like he was talking to a child. "Maybe try the used car lot down the street. They have more affordable options." Marcus stood up straighter. "We know the prices. We've been saving for a long time. We want to buy a birthday gift for our son." The other salesman smirked. Richard crossed his arms. "Look," Richard said, not trying to hide his rudeness now. "We don't want to waste anyone's time. These cars aren't for everyone." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He had dealt with people like Richard all his life. People who judged him before knowing him. People who thought his skin color told them everything they needed to know about his wallet. "Our money is just as good as anyone else's," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady. "We'd like to see the cars, please." Richard's fake smile disappeared completely. "I think you're in the wrong place." Diane saw the look on Marcus's face and walked over. She had seen that look many times in their 30 years of marriage. It was the look he got when he was trying to stay calm while being disrespected. "Is there a problem?" she asked, standing next to her husband. Richard looked at them, both with cold eyes. "I was just telling your husband that these cars might not be in your price range. We have $90,000 saved," Diane said clearly. "We've been saving for 20 years to buy our son something special." The 3 salesmen looked at each other. One of them laughed softly. Marcus felt his hands shake a little, but he kept them at his sides. "Look," Richard said, "even if you have the money, these cars need special care. They're not like your Toyota out there." Marcus felt his anger rising. How do you know what car we drive? I saw you pull up, Richard said with a smirk. That car is at least 10 years old. Other customers in the showroom were starting to look at them. A young white couple who had come in after Marcus and Diane were already test driving a car. An older man in an expensive suit was signing papers at a desk. We worked hard for our money, Marcus said. We want to see what cars you have around $90,000. Richard sighed loudly, like he was dealing with difficult children. Fine. The cheapest car we have is that one. He pointed to a small silver car in the corner. It's $82,000. But with taxes and fees, you're looking at over $90,000. Can we see it? Diane asked. I need to check if you can even get a loan first, Richard said. Marcus felt his face get hot. We don't need a loan. We have cash. Richard raised his eyebrows like he didn't believe them. Just then, a man in a suit even nicer than the salesman's walked out of an office. He had a gold pin on his jacket that said, Manager. Is everything okay here, Richard? The manager asked, looking at Marcus and Diane with suspicious eyes. These people say they want to buy a car, Richard said in a way that made it clear he didn't believe them. The manager looked at Marcus and Diane, taking in their simple clothes and the way the other customers were staring. Sir, Mom, the manager said with a tight smile, this is a high-end dealership. Our clients expect a certain atmosphere. We just want to buy a car, Marcus said firmly. That's all. The manager's smile disappeared. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We have the right to refuse service to anyone. Diane stepped forward. Is it because we're black? Is that why you won't help us? The showroom went completely quiet. The manager's face turned red. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, he said in a low, angry voice. Now, before I call security. Marcus took Diane's hand. Come on, honey. They don't deserve our business. As they walked toward the door, Marcus held his head high even though he felt shame burning inside him. Diane squeezed his hand hard, fighting back tears. Outside, the bright sun felt too hot now. They got into their old Toyota without speaking. Marcus started the car and sat with his hands on the wheel. We should have dressed better, Diane said softly. Marcus shook his head. It wouldn't have mattered. They made up their minds about us the second we walked in. Diane wiped a tear from her cheek. What do we do about James's gift now? We'll find somewhere else, Marcus said. Somewhere they treat people with respect. As they drove away, neither of them noticed the security cameras outside the dealership that had recorded everything. Neither of them knew that this terrible moment would soon change their lives in ways they could never imagine. That evening, Marcus and Diane drove to their son's house for dinner. James lived in a nice but modest home in a middle-class neighborhood. He could have lived in a mansion, but he kept his wealth hidden from everyone, even his parents. James was cooking pasta when they arrived. He hugged them both at the door. At 35, he looked a lot like his father, tall with kind eyes and a warm smile. But today, he noticed right away that something was wrong. Mom, Dad, what happened? James asked as they sat at his kitchen table. You both look upset. Marcus stared at his hands on the table. He didn't want to tell James about what happened. It felt like failure somehow. It's nothing, Marcus said. Just had a bad experience at a store. Diane shook her head. We should tell him, Marcus. She turned to James. We went to buy you a birthday gift, but it didn't work out. James stopped stirring the pasta sauce. What kind of gift needs both of you to go shopping? Marcus and Diane looked at each other. We wanted to buy you a car, Marcus finally said. A nice one. We've been saving for years. James's eyes widened. A car? You don't need to do that. My car works fine. We wanted to, Diane said softly. You've done so well with your company. We're so proud of you. James felt a stab of guilt. If they only knew that he had sold his company for billions just last month. He could buy 1,000 cars now, but he hadn't told them because he wanted things to stay normal between them. "So what happened at the store?" James asked, turning down the heat on the stove. Marcus's jaw tightened. It wasn't a store. It was Elite Motors, that fancy car dealership downtown. "They treated us like we didn't belong there," Diane added. "Like we couldn't possibly have enough money to shop there." James felt something cold grow in his chest. "Tell me everything." For the next 10 minutes, Marcus and Diane told James about their experience. How no one would help them. How Richard the salesman talked down to them. How the manager asked them to leave and threatened to call security. As they talked, James got quieter and quieter. His hands formed fists on the table. When they finished, he took a deep breath. "I'm so sorry that happened to you," he said in a low voice. "No one should be treated that way." "It's not your fault," Marcus said. "We're used to it. It's been happening our whole lives." James shook his head. "That doesn't make it right." He paused, thinking. "Which salesman did you say it was?" "Richard," Diane said. "Tall guy with slick hair." "And the manager, but we didn't get his name." James nodded slowly. "And this was at Elite Motors, the big glass building on Central Avenue." "That's the one," Marcus confirmed. "But let's forget about it. We'll find you another gift somewhere else." James got up and hugged his parents. "You don't need to buy me anything. Having you as my parents is the greatest gift." They ate dinner together, talking about other things. James made them laugh with stories about his neighbors. By the time dessert came, Marcus and Diane seemed happier. But inside, James was making plans. His parents had faced this kind of treatment their whole lives, but things were different now. James had power. He had money. And tomorrow, he would use both to teach Elite Motors a lesson they would never forget. After his parents left, James made 3 phone calls. The first was to his assistant. The second was to his lawyer. The third was to a friend who owned the biggest Rolls-Royce dealership in the country. Early the next morning, James woke up with a clear plan in his mind. He usually dressed in simple clothes like jeans and t-shirts, even though he could afford the most expensive suits in the world. Today would be different. He opened the special closet in the back of his bedroom. Inside hung suits that cost more than most cars. He picked a dark blue one that his business partner had helped him choose for important meetings. Next came his most expensive watch, one that cost over $100,000. He had bought it to celebrate when he sold his company, but he rarely wore it. While he dressed, his phone rang. It was Mike, his lawyer. "I got the security footage from Elite Motors," Mike said. "A friend at the security company pulled it for me. It shows everything your parents told you. The whole thing is clearly on video." "Good," James said. "Keep it safe. We might need it." His next call was from Sarah, his assistant. "The Rolls-Royces are ready," she said. "They'll be delivered to Elite Motors at exactly 11:30 this morning. I've arranged everything with Mr. Johnson at the Rolls-Royce dealership." "Perfect," James said. "And the other thing?" "Yes, I contacted the head office of Elite Motors. The regional manager will be calling you this afternoon. He was very concerned when I mentioned possible discrimination." James smiled. "Thank you, Sarah. Now I need you to call my parents. Tell them to meet me at Elite Motors at 11:45. Don't tell them why." After breakfast, James got into his Tesla. Most days he drove this car because it didn't attract attention. But in his garage, he also had a Bentley for special occasions. Today was definitely a special occasion. "Take me to Elite Motors," he told his driver, Carlos. As they drove, James looked out the window. His parents had worked so hard their whole lives. His father had been a high school teacher. His mother had been a nurse. They had saved every extra dollar to give him a good education. Because of their sacrifice, he had been able to start his tech company. And now they had tried to spend their life savings on a car for him, only to be treated like they didn't belong. "We're almost there, sir," Carlos said, interrupting James's thoughts. Elite Motors looked even fancier in the morning light. The glass building sparkled. Expensive cars lined the parking lot. James could see people inside, moving around the showroom. "Wait here," James told Carlos. "I'll be about an hour." James straightened his tie and walked toward the entrance. Through the glass doors, he could see the same 3 salesmen who had been there yesterday. Richard, the one who had insulted his parents, was talking to a customer. The moment James stepped inside, all eyes turned to him. He knew what they saw. A young black man in a suit that probably cost more than they made in a month, wearing a watch worth more than some of the cars in the showroom. Richard immediately excused himself from his customer and walked quickly toward James. The other salesman followed behind him. "Good morning, sir," Richard said with a big smile. "Welcome to Elite Motors. How can I help you today?" James looked at Richard's name tag to confirm it was him. Then he looked at the other salesmen, who were all smiling now, eager to help the man they thought was rich. "I'm looking for the manager," James said calmly. "And for Richard, who I see is right here." Richard's smile got even bigger. "That's me, and I'd be happy to get the manager for you. May I ask what this is regarding?" James checked his watch. It was 11:15. The Rolls-Royces would arrive in 15 minutes. "My name is James Williams," he said. "And yesterday, you kicked my parents out of this dealership." Richard's smile froze on his face. The color drained from his cheeks as he realized who was standing in front of him. The other salesman looked confused, glancing between Richard and James. "Your parents?" Richard asked in a weak voice. "Yes, Marcus and Diane Williams. You told them they couldn't afford to shop here yesterday. You made them feel small and unwelcome." The manager walked out of his office, curious about the well-dressed man talking to his sales team. He had a big smile ready. "Good morning, sir. I'm David Parker, the manager. How can I help you today?" James turned to face him. "You can explain why you threatened to call security on my parents yesterday when they came to buy me a birthday gift." David's smile disappeared. "I'm sorry. Who are your parents?" "Marcus and Diane Williams. They came in with $90,000 in cash to buy me a car. You told them to leave." Now both Richard and David looked scared. The other salesman backed away slowly, not wanting to be part of what was happening. "There must be some mistake," David said quickly. "We would never." "Save it," James cut him off. "The security cameras caught everything. My lawyer has the footage." A small crowd of customers had gathered, watching the scene with interest. They could feel the tension in the air. "Mr. Williams," Richard tried again, "if there was a misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding," James said coldly. "You judged my parents by how they looked. You decided they didn't have money because they're black and don't wear fancy clothes." James checked his watch again. It was 11:28, almost time. "Who are you exactly?" David asked, his voice shaking a little. "My name is James Williams. I founded Green Tech Solutions. Maybe you've heard of it." David's eyes widened. Green Tech Solutions had been in the news last month when it sold for billions of dollars. "You're the James Williams?" Richard asked, his voice barely a whisper now. "Yes, the James Williams whose parents you insulted. The James Williams who could buy this entire dealership with what I earn in interest each month." The front doors opened, and a woman in a sharp business suit walked in. She was Sarah, James's assistant. "Perfect timing," James said. "Sarah, could you please tell these gentlemen what's about to happen?" Sarah smiled professionally. "Of course, Mr. Williams. In about 1 minute, 2 brand new Rolls-Royces will be delivered here. They've already been paid for in full. Mr. Williams purchased them this morning for his parents." David's mouth opened, but no words came out. Richard looked like he might be sick. Just then, everyone's attention turned to the large windows at the front of the showroom. 2 gleaming Rolls-Royces, one black, one white, pulled into the parking lot. They parked right in front of the entrance, where everyone could see them. A man in a suit got out of one car and handed 2 sets of keys to Sarah through the open door. She thanked him and closed the door again. "Those are phantom models," James explained to the stunned salesman. They cost about $450,000 each. I bought them from your competitor across town." Sarah handed the keys to James, who put them in his pocket. "But that's not all," James continued. "Sarah, what else did we do this morning?" Sarah checked her tablet. "You also bought 10 cars for your company executives. The total purchase was just over $2.8 million. That deal was also completed with your competitor." David looked like he might faint. The dealership was completely silent now. Even the customers were frozen in place, watching the scene unfold. "Those sales would have made your year," James said quietly. "But you decided my parents weren't good enough for your business." Outside, a familiar Toyota pulled into the parking lot. Marcus and Diane had arrived, right on time. Marcus and Diane got out of their Toyota, looking confused. Sarah had only told them that James wanted to meet them at Elite Motors. They had no idea why their son would want them to come back to the place that had treated them so badly. "James?" Marcus called as they entered the showroom. "What's going on?" The moment they walked in, they recognized Richard and the manager. Diane grabbed Marcus's hand tightly. James walked over and hugged them both. "Mom, Dad, I'm glad you're here," James said. Then he turned to Richard and David. "These are my parents, the people you threw out yesterday." Richard and David looked at Marcus and Diane with new eyes. Now they saw them as the parents of a billionaire, not just an ordinary black couple in simple clothes. "Mr. and Mrs. Williams," David said quickly, "there was a terrible misunderstanding yesterday. We would like to offer our deepest apologies." Diane looked at the manager with clear eyes. "A misunderstanding? You threatened to call security on us. And you told us to go to a used car lot," Marcus added, looking at Richard. Richard's face turned red. I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," James said firmly. "You meant every word. You judged my parents by how they looked, not by who they are." The showroom was completely silent. Even the phones had stopped ringing. Everyone was watching the scene unfold. "Would you like to see what I bought you?" James asked his parents. He led them to the window where they could see the 2 Rolls-Royces parked outside. "Those?" Diane asked in shock. "You bought those?" James nodded. "One for each of you. The white one is yours, Mom. The black one is for Dad." Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "James, those must cost about $450,000 each," James finished for him. "I can afford it, Dad. I haven't been completely honest with you both." For the next few minutes, James explained to his stunned parents about selling his company and becoming a billionaire. He told them he had kept it secret because he wanted things to stay normal between them. "I was going to tell you next week on my birthday," James said. "But after what happened here yesterday, I decided to do this instead." Tears filled Diane's eyes. Marcus stood up straighter, his chest swelling with pride at his son's success. "James," Marcus said softly, "we came here to buy you a car, not the other way around." James smiled. "I know, Dad, and that means everything to me. You two worked so hard your whole lives. You deserve these cars more than anyone." He turned back to Richard and David, who had been watching the family moment in uncomfortable silence. "Now," James said to them, "I want you both to personally hand the keys to my parents and apologize." Richard and David looked at each other nervously. Then David stepped forward and held out the keys to the white Rolls-Royce. "Mrs. Williams," he said, his voice shaking, "please accept this key and my sincere apology for how you were treated." Diane took the key slowly, her hand trembling a little. Richard then held out the keys to the black Rolls-Royce to Marcus. "Mr. Williams, I'm truly sorry for how I spoke to you yesterday. Please accept this key and my apology." Marcus looked Richard straight in the eyes as he took the key. "I accept your apology, but I hope you learn from this. Never judge people by how they look." By now, people had gathered outside the dealership. Some were taking pictures with their phones. The 2 gleaming Rolls-Royces with Marcus and Diane standing next to them made quite a sight. A young salesman who had been watching everything came up to James. "Mr. Williams, is there anything I can do for you?" James thought for a moment. "Yes, there is. But first, I need to make a phone call to your corporate office." James stepped away from the group and made his phone call. Everyone in the showroom watched him with wide eyes. Marcus and Diane stood by their new Rolls-Royces, still not fully believing what was happening. "Yes, this is James Williams," he said into his phone. "I'm speaking with Mr. Thompson." "Good. I'm at your Elite Motors dealership right now." The phone call lasted about 5 minutes. James did most of the talking, his voice serious but calm. When he finished, he walked back to his parents and the dealership staff. "That was Robert Thompson, the CEO of Elite Motors Group," James announced. "I told him everything that happened. David, the manager, looked like he might be sick. Mr. Williams, please." James held up his hand to stop him. "Mr. Thompson will be here in person tomorrow. He's flying in from Chicago tonight." A woman with a baby stroller who had been shopping for a car walked up to James. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you the James Williams who started Green Tech Solutions?" "Yes, I am," James replied with a friendly smile. "I read about you in Business Today magazine," she said. "Would you mind if I take a picture? No one will believe I saw you here." "Of course," James said. He posed for a quick picture with the woman. That was just the beginning. As word spread about what was happening at Elite Motors, more people gathered outside. Someone recognized James from TV and posted about the scene on social media. Within 30 minutes, the story was spreading online. Billionaire buys Rolls-Royces for parents after dealership kicks them out. A local news van pulled into the parking lot. A reporter and camera person hurried inside the showroom. "Mr. Williams," the reporter called, "can we get a statement about what's happening here today?" James looked at his parents. This much attention was not what they were used to. "Mom, Dad, we can leave if you want. I didn't mean for this to become such a big story." Marcus put his hand on his son's shoulder. "No, son. This is important. What happened to us happens to people every day. Maybe this will help change things." Diane nodded in agreement. "People need to hear this story." James turned to the reporter. "Yes, I'll give you a statement. But first, I want my parents to try out their new cars." The reporter smiled. "That would make great footage. Can we film them getting into the cars for the first time?" "If they're comfortable with that, yes," James said. Marcus and Diane agreed. They walked outside to their new Rolls-Royces with James. The cameras followed them, capturing everything. Marcus ran his hand over the shiny black paint of his new car. Diane peeked inside the white Rolls-Royce at the cream leather seats. "Go ahead," James encouraged them. "Get in." Marcus sat in the driver's seat of his Rolls-Royce. The leather was soft, and the car smelled new. He gripped the steering wheel and smiled. Diane sat in her car too, touching the wood trim with gentle fingers. "How does it feel?" James asked them. "Like a dream," Diane said, tears in her eyes. While his parents explored their new cars, James spoke to the reporter. He told the whole story, how his parents had saved for years to buy him a car, how they were treated at the dealership, and why he decided to buy them the Rolls-Royces. "This isn't just about cars," James explained. "It's about respect. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter what they wear or what they look like." The reporter nodded, writing everything down. "And what happens next, Mr. Williams?" James looked at Richard and David, who were standing off to the side, watching everything fall apart around them. "Next," James said, "next, we make sure this never happens to anyone else." By evening, the story was everywhere. It was on local TV news, websites, and social media. People shared it thousands of times. The video of Marcus and Diane sitting in their new Rolls-Royces for the first time had over 1 million views online. At home that night, James, Marcus, and Diane sat together in Marcus and Diane's living room. The keys to the 2 Rolls-Royces sat on the coffee table. They had driven the cars home, following James in his Bentley. Their quiet street had never seen such expensive cars before. "I still can't believe it," Marcus said, shaking his head. "My son, a billionaire." James smiled. "I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid things would change between us." Diane reached out and touched her son's face. "Nothing could ever change how we feel about you, James. We're proud of you because of who you are, not how much money you have." James's phone rang. It was Robert Thompson, the CEO of Elite Motors Group. "Mr. Williams," Thompson said when James answered, "I'm at the airport now. I wanted to tell you personally that Richard and David have both been fired, effective immediately." "Good," James said, "but that's just the beginning. We need to talk about real changes at all your dealerships." "Absolutely," Thompson agreed quickly. "I've set up a meeting for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. My team will be there. We want to hear your ideas." After the call, James explained to his parents what was happening. "The company is scared. They know how bad this looks for them. The video of you two has gone viral. People are calling for boycotts of Elite Motors." "We never wanted all this attention," Diane said softly. "I know, Mom," James replied, "but sometimes these things happen for a reason. This could lead to real change." Marcus nodded slowly. "When I was a young man, I couldn't even walk into places like that dealership. They wouldn't let me through the door. Things have changed, but not enough." The doorbell rang. It was Sarah, James's assistant, with some papers for him to sign. "The lawyers have drawn up a proposal for Elite Motors," Sarah explained. "They're ready to make big changes to avoid a lawsuit and more bad publicity." James looked through the papers. "This is good, but not enough." He made some notes in the margins. "Add these points too." Sarah nodded and took the papers back. "Also, you should know that 3 other families have come forward since this afternoon. They say they had similar experiences at Elite Motors. They want to join your complaint." James wasn't surprised. "Get their information. We'll include them in our meeting tomorrow." After Sarah left, the 3 of them sat quietly for a while. Finally, Diane broke the silence. "I'm still not sure I can drive that fancy car," she said. "People will stare." James laughed. "Yes, they will. That's the point of a Rolls-Royce." "Your mother is right," Marcus added. "We're simple people. Those cars seem like too much." James understood their feelings. "How about this? Keep the cars for special occasions. I'll buy you both something more comfortable for everyday use. Something nice, but not so flashy." Diane smiled at her son. "That sounds better, but you don't need to buy us anything else." "I want to," James insisted. "You both worked so hard your whole lives. You deserve nice things." Marcus looked at his son with tears in his eyes. "We already have the nicest thing in the world, a son with a good heart." James hugged his parents tightly. Tomorrow would be a big day. The meeting with Elite Motors would be just the beginning. James had bigger plans now. He would use his money and power to fight discrimination wherever he found it. As they talked into the night, one thing became clear. What had started as a painful experience was turning into something powerful. Sometimes, change starts in unexpected places, like a car dealership on an ordinary Saturday morning. 1 month later, Marcus and Diane stood next to James in front of Elite Motors. The building looked the same, but everything else had changed. A large crowd had gathered for the special event. News cameras pointed at a stage set up in front of the dealership. A big sign covered the front of the building, hidden under a cloth for now. "Are you ready?" James asked his parents. Marcus nodded. "Yes, son. We're ready." Robert Thompson, the CEO of Elite Motors Group, stepped up to the microphone on the stage. "Thank you all for coming today. 1 month ago, something terrible happened at this dealership. 2 wonderful people were judged by how they looked, not by who they are." The crowd was quiet, listening carefully. "Today we are making a new start," Thompson continued. "With the help of James Williams and his parents, Marcus and Diane Williams, we have made important changes to all of our dealerships across the country. He listed the changes: new training for all staff about treating everyone with respect, clear rules against discrimination, more diverse hiring, and a new program to help people from all backgrounds buy cars. But most importantly, Thompson said, we are renaming this dealership to remind us every day about treating people right. He waved to James, Marcus, and Diane to join him on stage. Together, they pulled the cloth off the big sign on the building. The sign now read, Williams Motors. Respect drives US. The crowd clapped and cheered. Cameras flashed. James put his arms around his parents' shoulders, proud of what they had accomplished together. After the ceremony, an older black man approached Marcus. I've been a car salesman for 30 years, he said. Never thought I'd see something like this. Thank you for standing up. The man was Harold Johnson, the new manager of Williams Motors. James had insisted that the dealership hire more black staff in leadership positions. As people began to leave, a young couple walked toward the dealership entrance. They were dressed in simple clothes, looking nervous like they didn't belong. Good afternoon, Marcus called to them. Are you looking for a car today? The young woman nodded. Yes, but we're not sure if we can afford these fancy cars. Marcus smiled. Why don't I introduce you to Harold? He'll help you find exactly what you need, no matter what your budget is. Inside the dealership, things looked different now. Photos on the walls showed all kinds of people with their new cars, people of different races, ages, and backgrounds. A new sign by the door read, All customers deserve respect. Later that day, James, Marcus, and Diane sat in Marcus and Diane's backyard. They had parked their cars in the driveway. The two Rolls-Royces they saved for special days like today, and their new everyday cars that James had bought them. Nice, but not too flashy. I never thought our bad day would turn into all this, Diane said, looking at the newspaper on the table. Their story was still making news. Marcus took her hand. Sometimes it takes something bad to make good things happen. James nodded. That's why I've started the Williams Foundation. We're going to help fight discrimination in all kinds of businesses, not just car dealerships. The foundation would use $50 million of James's money to help people who had been treated unfairly and to train businesses to treat everyone with respect. You've always made us proud, Diane told James, but never more than now. As the sun set, neighbors walked by and waved at the family. Some stopped to admire the cars. But what they really admired was the family itself. 3 people who had turned an ugly moment into a beautiful change. Marcus looked at his son and smiled. Not bad for a family that got kicked out of a car dealership, huh? James laughed. Not bad at all, Dad. Not bad at all.